Welcome to the NFC West Sports Betting Picks video here at FTN Bets and available on the Game Plus Network. We've been going division by division through the entire NFL. We have 7 divisions down and 1 division left to go, and that is going to be the NFC West here today. Before we get started, though, let me bring in my partner in crime, Deqwan Young. Quan, what's going on tonight, dude?
Benny, what's going on? I am coming out swinging like Aaron Donald with 2 Cincinnati Bengals helmets and a fight in the middle of practice. I'm excited for the NFC West. If you can't tell, we got the Stafford jersey rolling. I've been a lifelong Los Angeles Rams fan. Go Rams, Rams house, all that good stuff. Been cheering for the Rams my whole life. So I'm excited to talk about the NFC West and what I think will be a repeat in many fashions.
Yeah, I mean, very interesting division this year, right? You have the defending champion Los Angeles Rams. You have the San Francisco 49ers. You have the Arizona Cardinals, who actually finished second in this division last year, which I don't know if a lot of people remember. And then after all that, we have the Seattle Seahawks and whatever they're going to be this year. But again, you know what? There are some positives for the Seattle Seahawks too. I mean, this was a 7-10 team last year. Yes, they got rid of Russell Wilson. But you know what? We have so many other teams to talk about here, Quan. I do not want to waste too much time talking about the Seattle Seahawks. You mentioned it already. The Los Angeles Rams are the chalk. They are the team that is most likely to repeat as the champions of this division here. I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to be the team that gives them the toughest test. But even the San Francisco 49ers, we have to see what's going to happen here. Trey Lance taking over for quarterback with, technically they still have Jimmy G hanging around there, but it's going to be Trey Lance's team this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out with basically a rookie quarterback, right? I mean, he played a little bit last year, but, for the most part, this is the first time we're really seeing him, with the full training camp and being under center. So let's start there because I think that's the biggest wild card in this division right now. What do you expect out of Trey Lance? What do you expect out of the 49ers here in 2022?
I think the defense is going to get them through a lot of games. I think the running game, what Kyle Shanahan draws up as far as getting Debo involved, I think that was the saving grace for this season. If Debo had left, I think we're looking at a completely different team that would be on the field with Trey Lance, and that getting him back was a big factor. So I think he's going to struggle early, but in those games, you got to look for the defense to step up, make plays, and then he has weapons. Deep, like I said, I mentioned Debo already. Brandon Ayuk, they're talking about him having a monster season, which was some of the highlights that I've seen in training camp and in the preseason. He looks like he's going to be the guy, and this team was 1 or 2 plays away from making it to the Super Bowl last season. So I don't know about the drop off from Jimmy G to Trey Lance because you're looking at a veteran quarterback. No matter how much 49ers fans talk negatively about Jimmy G, this is a guy that got you to a Super Bowl, played okay. A couple of things didn't go his way in that game, but they were a few plays away again from winning that Super Bowl. So you look to see in those games where Trey Lance struggles, what happens on the other side of the ball? Can they control the clock? Can they run the ball? Can they do things to help him out?
Yeah, it's very interesting to me because it's an incredibly unconventional offense, right? Your number one wide receiver is really a running back. Your quarterback is arguably a running back, but they do have a very good offensive line. They have an unbelievable run blocking tight end who they run behind as well in George Kittle. They have some very talented pass catchers out there. Debo is a freak athlete. Kittle is a freak athlete. Brandon Ayuk, who you mentioned, is a guy that everybody's expecting to step up, has great hands, can run a lot of routes. So when you think about an NFL offense, this is not your prototypical NFL offense, but then again, they get it done, right? And they have a defense that's so good that this is not an offense that you have to be like, you guys got to put up 40 a game for us to win. Hell, if this offense puts up 24 a game with the defense that they have, they're probably going to wind up winning double-digit games here. So, again, you don't need them to be great. You just need them to be above average, move the ball, kind of keep the defense off the field and keep them fresh. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen here with them. Arizona is the other team that I think we have to talk about here a little bit because I'm not really sure what to expect with this Arizona team right now. I don't think their defense is good enough to compete with some of the other top defenses that are in this division. And then when you look at the offense, I mean, you're going to be 6 weeks without DeAndre Hopkins, your number one wide receiver. Yes, you have Hollywood Brown if he stops driving his car and getting pulled over and getting arrested for it. You have a guy like I mean, maybe not. I mean, all these wide receivers, they like to go fast, Quan, and they get themselves in trouble. So, I mean, you know what, guys, for the season at least, like get an Uber, you can afford it. You guys make enough money for it. But, even guys like Rondell Moore and AJ Green, like they have enough weapons to kind of get through this. Probably going to see a lot of Zach Ertz, especially early in the year, to make up for the fact that you don't have DeAndre Hopkins there. I think they found something last year in James Conner at running back. I like him a lot over there. So there's a lot of good weapons on the offensive side of the football there. I don't know if they have enough on defense there. But what do you think about the Arizona Cardinals?
I am looking very forward to the Arizona Cardinals starting out hot, and then Cliff Kingsbury doing whatever he does in the second half of the season to lose every game, every close game possible. They're just an inconsistent team once it gets down to crunch time. And I think it's been that way for the past few seasons. And what is I saw something, I think it was last week where, Kyler Murray's calling the plays in the second half. They come out, Kyler Murray, 2 drives, 2 touchdowns, Kingsbury, 3 drives, no touchdowns. When are they going to get on the same page? And if they can keep that consistency throughout the season, how far can they actually go? Because it's a scary team when they're on, but they're only on for one part of the season.
And it's interesting too, because Kingsbury was known as a guy who was like an offensive guru, right? When they hired him, like that was the reason why they hired him. And it kind of almost feels like they're better when he just gets out of the way and lets Kyler Murray do his thing. But you know what? We'll have to see how that works out. Like I said, the one thing I will say here, I mean, those 3 teams, the Rams, the Cardinals, the 49ers, only 2 wins separated the top to the bottom of this division last year. The Rams were 12-5, Cardinals were 11-6. And San Francisco was 10-7. All 3 of those teams made the playoffs last year. And I wouldn't doubt if we get 3 teams from the NFC West that make the playoffs again this year. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, and we'll be right back to break down some of the win totals and the odds for all these teams to win the division, to win the conference, and to win the Super Bowl here on Betting with Benny. And welcome back to Betting with Benny here at FTN Bets and available on the Game Plus Network. We are talking NFC West sports betting preview here. Quan, let's throw up the big graphic and start getting into it here. So we're going to start at the bottom with the Seattle Seahawks. Jeff Ratcliffe has them projected for just 6.6 wins this year after being 7-10 last year. Taking a look at some of the sports books that are out there in the market, the fair value on the Seattle Seahawks team is for 6 wins. 6 wins is -110, so that should be the fair value there. Over 5.5 wins you can get on DraftKings at -125. Under 7.5 wins, which is a big high jump up there, -335 over on Bet Rivers and Unibet. I love the under 7.5 wins, Quan, but -335 is not a good payout. That's not something that we're going to be interested in getting here. So really, I guess the question is, I guess the real question is Seattle Seahawks. Do we like them over 5.5 at -125, meaning we get about 80 cents on the dollar for them to go over 5.5? I don't really love that number.
I don't love it either. I think they're going to be a bad team. They've been trending downwards since though you think about those great teams in 2014, 15 with Legion of Boom and what they did on defense and having Russ back there, and now they're nothing. I mean, I can't think of anything that's good. DK's out there by himself. You're looking at Geno Smith or Drew Lock as your starting quarterback, and you got to wonder what the hell were they doing in the draft, trying to put any type of faith in either one of those. Not to, Geno's been a journeyman. He was heralded as, somebody that was going to be great in New York, and then just never came around. And then same with Drew Lock in Denver. So they're trying to find those quarterbacks that are reclamation projects, and I just don't think either of those 2 guys are going to be it. And Seattle's typically been a running team, and I mean, that's all you can kind of hope for. They can throw together some type of running game that puts them over the top. And that's really the only thing I can say about them.
Yeah. So there's 2 things I want to mention here real quick about Seattle. The first one is today I saw something in the news where Pete Carroll was talking about how they have 2 number 1 quarterbacks. And you and I have both been around football long enough, Quan, to know when you have 2 number 1 quarterbacks, you really don't have a number 1 quarterback, because that's always the way it is. It's a college football thing. You hear it all the time. When there's 2 number 1s, there's no actual number 1. You don't have that guy. You don't have that leader right there. And that's the way I think the Seattle Seahawks are this year. No knock on Geno Smith or Drew Lock. I think they are both NFL caliber quarterbacks, but not NFL caliber starting quarterbacks that are going to lead a team to anything, to any special place over there. They're guys that belong in the league, but they're not guys that belong as a starter on the team. And maybe one of them proves me wrong, but they both had ample chances to prove everybody wrong, and they haven't. Second thing I want to mention here, Chris Carson suffered an injury and is going to be out for basically his career. His career is kind of over. So shout out to Chris Carson. He's helped a couple of my fantasy teams over the year. So speedy recovery, and hopefully that, he's able to have a good quality of life going forward, something with his neck or something like that. So you obviously don't want to mess around with that. But here's the problem that I have. You mentioned it in the draft. They could have found a quarterback. And again, it wasn't a great quarterback class here in this draft, but they drafted a running back in Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker has a hernia right now. I have a problem with this because they're being very tight-lipped about what's going on. We are 2 weeks from the season. I don't even know if he's going to start this season. I don't know how long he's going to be out this season. And even if he is, he's a rookie who still needs to kind of learn his way into what being an NFL running back is. So I think this is great news for Rashad Penny with Carson out of the way now. And then with Kenneth Walker not being able to go. Like DJ Dallas is the next best running back on this team behind Rashad Penny here. So at least early in the season, we're going to get a lot of what we saw late in the season with Rashad Penny when he was there. And, whether you like Rashad Penny or not, the guy did produce when he got the volume. And right now I see him falling into a massive amount of volume. Now, again, they could wind up being trailing and he might not get any carries in the third or fourth quarter of these games if they're down a couple touchdowns. But I do think that is those are the two things that we got to think about here with the Seattle Seahawks. If you're falling apart, Quan, before week one even starts, that does not give me a lot of faith in you going forward this year. So I think the under is the way to play this here. I would not go under 5.5, though. That is a very low number there. But you cannot get me to take over 5.5 at minus 125. There is just no value in that number. So let's throw that graphic up again. We'll talk about the next team here. I forgot who we had third here. I want to see who Jeff has third. Okay, yeah, it is the Arizona Cardinals. I wasn't sure if it was the Cardinals or the 49ers, but the Cardinals, I agree with, are the third best team in this division here. 9.3 is the projected win totals that Jeff Ratcliffe had for them. 8.5 is the number that's out there in the market, and I like this number a lot. I will take the over. DraftKings, PointsBet, FanDuel, BetMGM, over 8.5 wins. I think the Cardinals get to 9. Like I said, they had 11 last year, so this is 2 wins below where they were last year. Minus 110 over and under at that 8.5 win number. Yes, they're going to be without DeAndre Hopkins for half the season, but they got 2 wins against Seattle already right there. And I think they could come up with another, I think they could come up with another 7 here to get over this 8.5 and get to 9. Again, 9 wins is going to have them knocking on the door of the playoffs. It might come down to tiebreakers or so, but 9 wins is what I'm looking at here for the Cardinals. And I don't really like them to win the division, to win the NFC, or to win the Super Bowl. But I'll take the over on 8.5 wins with the Cardinals. What do you think about that one?
I think this is the toughest. Like, I don't want to say the toughest division, but this is the division that is probably going to send the most teams to the playoffs. If you look, man, they're like we're projecting 10.5 wins, 10.6 wins, 9.3 wins. I mean, that's a tough get for each of those teams to fight atop the division. We're talking about a slugfest at the top. So if I'm thinking outside of what NFC East, I say one team goes. NFC North, one team goes. NFC South, maybe 2 teams. So, if you're just looking around, I think this is going to be the fight at the top. I think the Cardinals, they're going to have to pull off some magic, which Kyler Murray is good at. But without DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 games, it's going to be like normally they start hot, and then you got to see how they come out in the second half. So they get off to that hot start and they get Hopkins back. They'll be pretty decent.
Yeah, remember, they lost their 2 top receivers, or at least for 6 games, they're going to be without Hopkins. But Christian Kirk also winds up going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, in the offseason. So they're really replacing 2 guys out there. Now, again, the guys that they're replacing them with, they did bring in Hollywood Brown. Nothing wrong with that. He's obviously an above-average wide receiver. A.J. Green is still a guy who's got a little bit left. Definitely not the A.J. Green that he was with the Cincinnati Bengals in his heyday. But I still think he's a positive player for them out there. And Rondale Moore is the guy who's really going to have to step up. Zach Ertz, another one. Like I said, there's a lot of weapons here for this team. I do think they get to at least 9 wins. I wouldn't be shocked if they get to 10. You had 3 teams in this division get to 10 wins last year. So I definitely know that it can happen. And I do think it's very likely to happen again here. So give me the over on that Arizona Cardinals team. Let's talk about the next one, Quan. Throw that graphic up one more time. We're going to the San Francisco 49ers right now. 10 wins at minus 110 on DraftKings, the over and under for the 49ers. Over 9.5 wins is at minus 140. So obviously we think it's going to be over, over 10 wins, which would put them in the playoffs. I like that quite a bit here. That 10 win number at, DraftKings, I hate taking a round number. I want to either win or lose. I don't want to push on this, but I'm fine taking 10 at minus 110 on the San Francisco 49ers because I do think they're going to win double-digit games, probably even more than 10. I think they could get to 11 or 12 and challenge. And I know you don't want to hear this as a Rams fan, but I think they could challenge the Rams for this division this year. I don't even hate the number on them to win the to win the division, to win the conference. I think all those numbers are in play here for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if I really want them to win the Super Bowl, but like you said, they were a couple plays away from making it last year. So this is definitely a team that you have to consider in that realm of teams that can make some noise here. What are you thinking about the 49ers? You think they go over that 10 number right there, or do you think that's a good number for them?
No, I agree with you. They can challenge. And I do have a question. I'm going to throw this graphic back up. If you think that they can challenge, would you rather take them winning the division than taking the 10 wins? Because I don't think the Cardinals can top either the Rams or the Niners. So if you're looking at a division bet, you get plus 180. Wouldn't that be better?
So, I mean, yes, that's good. I actually prefer the over 10 wins. And I'll tell you why I prefer the over 10 wins here, right? Because we know that if they're going to make the playoffs, they need to get at least 10 wins, right? Like that was the number last year. That's the number we've kind of been talking about throughout this entire process here for all these teams and all the divisions that we've been talking about here. So the plus 180, you really need them to get ahead of the Rams. So the question I'll ask you as a Rams fan is, I would think the plus 180 is better if you don't think the Rams can get to 12 or 13 wins. Because 12 or 13 wins would be at least one or two more than San Francisco needs in order to cash the over 10 win number that we're talking about here. And I do think the Rams can get to 12 or 13 wins. So I don't want to take the plus 180 and lose at San Francisco finishing 11-6 or even 12-5 if the Rams finish 13-4 or 12-5 and are a game ahead of them still. So the way I'm going to try to get the plus money is going to be by looking at the Rams to take the division at plus 130. But if I think the Rams can take the division at plus 130 and I still think San Francisco is going to get double-digit wins, I could cash both of those bets by taking San Francisco over 10. So that's why I like the San Francisco over 10, because it kind of goes with my next bet that we'll talk about here in a minute on your Rams.
I think you can get into it because, I'll make this point that the Rams are playing that number one schedule, that number one team schedule. I mean, they're just starting off with the Bills. They won the Super Bowl, so they're playing every tough team you can imagine. So I think they still make the playoffs. I think winning the division isn't out of the question, but man, if I'm they're both probably going to be a double-digit team or win team. So I would rather gamble on the division than take that 10. But they're a double-digit team. It's kind of like, pick your poison.
Well, 100%. And this is the thing, there's no, and I say this to people all the time, there's no one correct way to sports bet. That's why there are so many different markets that you could bet into. If you think there's value on a team total, there's probably also value on the division, the conference, and the Super Bowl, because they're all basically derivatives of each other, right? Like you look at how many games a team's going to win, how many games a team is going to win. There you go. I got that out finally, that sentence. You look at how many games the team is going to win, and then you put that versus the other teams in their division there, and that's how you get those other numbers. So, again, whenever you find value in the win total market, there's probably also going to be value on the payouts in the other market just because you're higher on a certain team or a certain number than everybody else. So, again, whichever way you want to play it is perfectly fine as long as you have a reasoning on why you're doing it and the way that you see it. My big thing with the 49ers team this year is, if it was Jimmy G at quarterback again, and I'm not saying Jimmy G has a higher ceiling or anything like that than Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance could become a much better quarterback than Jimmy G could ever dream of. But right now, I felt very comfortable with Jimmy G. Again, he's not the guy that's going to go out there and win you the games by himself, but he's also a guy that I have enough faith in coming from Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, that he understands how not to lose football games. And that is such a big thing in the NFL. Not losing the turnover battle, not making the stupid play, not doing more than what you can do is a way that teams win a lot of football games in the NFL. And it's worked so far for San Francisco. Trey Lance, I think, has the ability to be more flashy and has more upside. but I'm not convinced yet that he's going to be the guy that doesn't make some of those bad mistakes. So when it comes down to who I think is going to win, we've talked about this. I think it was the NFC North when we were talking about the difference between if you like the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings and you have them kind of on the same tier, it comes down to who do you pick. And at the end of the day, I said, I just have more faith in Aaron Rodgers to get it done than I do in Kirk Cousins. Well, it's kind of the same thing here with the way I'm looking at it. I'd rather take the plus 130 on the Los Angeles Rams because I just have a lot more faith that a guy like Matthew Stafford is going to be able to do what he has to do to get his team over the hump at the end of the year. Again, maybe Trey Lance turns out to be a better player than Matthew Stafford does down the road, but for all purpose, he's basically a rookie right now with his first opportunity under center. And a lot of times you got to go through some of those growing pains before you get over the hump. And I think this is one of those years where, maybe there's some growing pains here. So I'm still on the Rams to win this division. Plus 130. I mean, listen, you're getting the defending Super Bowl champs to win their 4-team division at a plus 130 number here, Quan. You got to like that. 12-1 for them to win the Super Bowl. They did it last year, so I don't think it's crazy, although it is very tough to repeat. Plus 550 to win the NFC. I feel the plus 550 number is a little lower than it should be there. Again, if you have them at 12-1 to win the Super Bowl, you would theoretically expect to win the NFC number to be half of that at plus 600. So at plus 550, it's probably a little below where it wants to be. I'm not taking the Rams to win the Super Bowl, but I do really like that Rams plus 130 division number. And then the Rams win total, 10.6 is what Jeff has them at. 10.5 is the consensus number in the market. Again, sometimes the number is just right where it is. And this is why I like the San Francisco number better, because San Francisco at 10, we could take the over here with the 10.5 projection. With a 10.5 number in the market and a 10.6 projection at minus 110, there really isn't any value on betting the win total for LA. So I like the division plus 130 for LA. I like the over for the San Francisco wins. I like the over 8.5 for the Arizona wins. And I'm not touching anything on the Seattle Seahawks. What do you think about all that?
I love it. I'm not gonna give out my super pick yet, but you know where I'm leaning. I think they've done everything to retool and get back there. Allen Robinson is gonna be great.
Yes.
And Bobby Wagner is gonna be if he can be Bobby Wagner, I think the middle of their defense is going to be unstoppable. You got Aaron Donald clogging up the middle, and then Bobby Wagner right behind it. Listen, 12-1 looked great. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, so there you go. We're going to take another quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with some of our favorite player prop bets for the NFC West here on Betting with Benny. Welcome back to Betting with Benny here at FTN Bets and available on the Game Plus Network. We talked about the NFC West here today. Now it's time to talk a couple NFC West player props. So, Quan, let's throw up the graphics and let's get into it here real quick. First one we're going to be talking about here is DK Metcalf under 6.5 touchdowns here. So, DK... first 3 years in the league, 7, 10, and last year he had 12 touchdowns, but the 12 touchdowns were on only 75 receptions. I don't think anybody thinks that the passing game in Seattle without Russell Wilson is going to be better than it was last year. Is DK Metcalf an absolute freak? Of course. Is DK Metcalf a guy who is going to be a really tough cover for whoever he has? Absolutely. Is DK Metcalf somebody, though, that we're expecting to put up monster numbers this year that top what he's done in the past? I don't think so. FTN reception projection has him for only 6.2 touchdowns this year. 6.5 is the number. It's juiced up to minus 115, minus 120 to the over. The under here is minus 115 as well. DK Metcalf under 6.5 touchdowns. And it's not a knock on DK Metcalf. It's more a knock on the two number one quarterbacks in Drew Lock and Geno Smith that the Seattle Seahawks have this year. So let's throw up that next one there, Quan. This is one that I do like here, though. I like Ricciardi Penny over 749 yards rushing. Last year he only played in, I think it was 10 games, and he had about 750 yards rushing when he played in those 10 games. But we talked about it early in the show. Here's the big thing. There's no Chris Carson this year, right? So already that made it just, okay, well, Kenneth Walker, the guy they drafted, and Ricciardi Penny are going to be going to see who those carries are. And now that we're hearing about this hernia and Kenneth Walker not being there and him likely to miss the beginning of the season here, I think at the very least for the beginning of the season, this is 100% Ricciardi Penny's backfield. He's going to probably get 80% of the touches early on in the year for a team that loves to run the football. So I think that this is going to be a year where he gets more carries than he's ever had before. He obviously produced very well last year in this situation when he had it. I think Rashad Penny goes over 749 rushing yards here, minus 115 on BetMGM. I think this is a really good price, really good play here with Rashad Penny. Let's throw up that last one here, Quan. Trey Lance under 6.5 rushing touchdowns. There were only 2 quarterbacks in the league last year who had more than 6.5 rushing touchdowns. One of them was Jalen Hurts, who finished with 10. The other one, surprisingly, Quan, do you know who the other guy besides Trey Lance, besides Jalen Hurts, that had over 6.5 rushing touchdowns last year was?
My only guess would be Josh Allen.
Nope.
That's probably wrong.
He was close. He did it the year before. He did it in 2020. You ready to hear this name? Because I don't even know if you're gonna be like, no way, is that true? Ryan Tannehill, 7 rushing touchdowns last year.
Yeah. They missed Derrick Henry a lot, so I'll get that to you.
The only other guy besides Jalen Hurts that had over 6.5 last year. So again, I like Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is going to be very good. I think Trey Lance could eventually be one of those guys that rushes for 700-800 yards as a quarterback and gets in the end zone 6, 7, 8 times. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. There were a couple guys that did it in 2020. I think we had 6 guys in 2020 that ran for more than 6 touchdowns. But last year, there were only 2 of them. Trey Lance has to stay healthy. Trey Lance has to be somebody who is involved down there in the goal line, even with all the wide receivers and tight ends and running backs who get carries down there. I just don't see him going over 6.5. So I like the under 6.5 touchdowns, and the FTN projections agree with me. Of all those 3, Quan, or anything else that you're thinking of, you got any player prop bets you like in the NFC West?
I like the Penny prop. I think you made a great point. No Kenneth Walker, no Chris Carson. Let Penny cook.
That's it. I mean, and eventually, like, Walker will be back eventually. I don't think the hernia is something that's going to keep him out all season. But again, it doesn't have to keep him out all season. He's a rookie. If he's missing training camp now, he's going to miss the first couple games of the season. Even when he comes back, it's going to take them a little while to get him to that point, which means that it's probably going to be a split. Even when it gets to that point later in the season, it's still probably going to be a 60-40 split. And that just means that Penny's going to have more and more chances to get carries, more and more chances to rack up those yards, more and more chances to get that over. And with that, we're going to be signing off here for the last preview on Betting with Benny. Make sure you guys tune in to the next show where we finally start talking about Week 1 NFL action here on Betting with Benny and Quan.